No one really prepares you for the awkward conversations in healthy relationships. Not cheating, not betrayal, but the quiet moments where you realize something small is starting to bother you more than it should, and you don't know how to say it without sounding like the bad guy. I'm 30. My partner is 31. We've been together for almost 6 months, and honestly, our relationship has been wonderful. I live alone in my own apartment. He still lives with his parents. Usually he spends the night once or twice a week, mostly Fridays or Saturdays. At first, he always asked if he could stay over, and I appreciated that. It felt respectful, intentional. I genuinely enjoy having him around. But recently, something shifted. Instead of asking, he started assuming. Friday would roll around, and suddenly it wasn't, "Can I stay over?" It was, "So I'll be here all weekend." And I didn't know how to react, because technically nothing was wrong, except it was starting to bother me. I work 2 jobs. My weekend schedule is inconsistent. Some nights I come home exhausted, overstimulated, and all I want is my bed to myself. I had already explained this to him before, that sometimes I need solitude to reset. So every time he assumed, I felt torn between wanting to be a good partner and needing to protect my own space. And the longer I stayed quiet, the heavier it felt. Eventually, I realized this wasn't about sleepovers. It was about boundaries. So one night, I decided to finally bring it up. I told him how much I appreciated that he used to ask, that it made me feel respected in my own home. He surprised me by being honest, too. He said that around the 6-month mark, he genuinely thought he didn't need to ask anymore, that it felt like our relationship had reached a point where my space was becoming our space. And suddenly everything clicked. We realized we had been interpreting the same situation differently. To me, the apartment was still mine, especially since we both agreed that moving in together wouldn't happen until at least a year in. To him, it felt like a gradual transition, a natural sharing of space over time. Neither of us was wrong. We were just unsensed. We talked it through calmly. No accusations. No defensiveness. We compromised. He agreed to go back to asking, or at least confirming, earlier in the week, and I agreed to be more open about when I need alone time, without letting resentment build. We also talked about our future, and realized we both see this relationship as something serious, long-term. I apologized for making him feel like I was pushing him away. He thanked me for being honest, instead of letting it turn into distance. Sometimes, healthy relationships aren't about big romantic gestures. They're about small conversations, clear boundaries, and the willingness to listen without assuming the worst. And I'm really glad we chose to talk. I didn't mean to get involved in someone else's marriage. At first, it felt harmless, just messages, just conversations. But 4 months later, I realized I was the first person she called every morning and the last one she talked to at night. That's when I started asking myself a question I couldn't ignore anymore. Did this turn into something it was never supposed to be? I'm 29, single, and a few months ago I matched with a woman named Lena on a dating app. From the start, she was upfront. She was married. She told me her husband knew she wanted someone to talk to and flirt with online, and that he was okay with it. She even showed me screenshots of their conversation. At the time, it seemed clear and honest. No secrets, no drama, just conversation. Lena was 24, recently married, and still trying to figure out her life. We lived in different cities, so everything stayed online. Messages turned into long conversations, and before I knew it, talking to her became part of my daily routine. Over time, our connection deepened. We didn't just exchange casual messages anymore. We talked every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Morning check-ins, late night calls, long conversations during lunch breaks. If something stressful happened at work, she called me. If she felt overwhelmed, I was the one she reached out to. There were moments that made me pause. A few times, she called me quietly from another room while she was at family gatherings. Other times, she'd message me while she was out with her husband, telling me she just needed a few minutes to breathe. It wasn't frequent, but it was intentional. I started to feel like I wasn't just someone she chatted with. I felt like her emotional anchor. What really stood out was how much she reacted to small gestures. I'd order her dinner when she said she forgot to eat. I sent flowers once after she had a rough week. She reacted like no one had ever done that for her before. She told me it made her feel noticed, taken care of. That's when the money part quietly entered the picture, not in a flashy way, but in a subtle one. I wasn't supporting her financially, but I was filling gaps. Meals, comfort, attention. Things she hinted she wasn't getting consistently at home. One night, after a long call, I realized something uncomfortable. I knew more about her daily struggles than her husband seemed to. I was the person she leaned on when she felt sick, stressed, or overwhelmed. When she had too much to drink, she messaged me more intensely, opening up in ways that felt deeply personal. And that's when the doubt hit. Her husband knew about me, but did he really know this version of our connection? Did he know she talked to me every day? That she shared her fears, her exhaustion, her loneliness? That she prioritized time with me whenever she could find it? I started questioning my own role. I wasn't sneaking around, but I also wasn't just a casual presence anymore. Emotional closeness doesn't need secrecy to cross a line. It just needs imbalance. I asked myself a hard question. If this were happening in my marriage, would I be okay with it? I didn't like the answer. Eventually, I had to face the truth. Even if everything started with permission, it had grown into something heavier. I had become her primary emotional support. I was providing care emotionally and in small, practical ways that should probably have been addressed inside her marriage. This wasn't about labels. It wasn't about intent. It was about impact. I realized that healthy boundaries aren't just about what's allowed. They're about what's sustainable and fair to everyone involved, especially when emotions, attention, and even small financial gestures start replacing something deeper. I stepped back, not because she was a bad person, not because I was trying to judge her marriage, but because I didn't want to be part of a dynamic that quietly blurred lines while pretending everything was fine. Sometimes the hardest relationships to walk away from are the ones that never officially existed. Not every affair starts with secrets. Some begin with permission and grow through silence. The real question isn't, did I do something wrong? It's, who is this costing more than it should? I never thought I'd be 30 years old, married, with a newborn baby, and living in my childhood bedroom. But here we are. In today's economy, a starter home feels like a pipe dream, and the price of our independence was a debt we couldn't pay. They say money shouldn't change a marriage, but when you're counting every penny while sharing a wall with your parents, the tension doesn't just sit in your bank account. It follows you into bed. My husband, Mark, is a saint. I don't say that lightly. When our daughter was born 14 months ago, the world felt like it was spinning out of control. We had lost our rental due to a sudden sale, and with the housing market in the U.S. looking like a battlefield, we had no choice but to move back in with my parents to save for a down payment. Mark took on a second job as a night shift consultant to bridge the gap. He was working 18-hour days, coming home with dark circles under his eyes, yet he never missed a diaper change. He was a provider, the protector, and the silent partner who carried the weight of our financial future on his shoulders. But as the months crawled by, the kindness he showed me started to feel like something else. To me, it felt like a debt I was accruing, a mounting balance of emotional and financial labor that I didn't know how to repay. Living with your parents as an adult is a constant exercise in boundary setting. My mother meant well, but she had an opinion on everything, from how much Mark was earning to why I wasn't back to my old self. Yet, the financial pressure was a constant hum in the background. We had a goal, $50,000 for a down payment. Every time we reached a milestone, the market seemed to jump another 10%. Mark became a ghost. He was there, but he wasn't. He'd come home from his second job, kiss my forehead, and fall into a dead sleep. Our intimacy didn't just decline. It vanished. I was recovering physically and mentally from a difficult birth, and Mark never pressured me. Not once. He made me feel safe. He made me feel cared for, and he never made me feel like I owed him anything for the grueling hours he was putting in. But that was the problem. I started scrolling through forums and reading stories about men who felt like their marriages had become roommate situations once kids and money stress entered the picture. I saw men who felt completely disconnected from their wives because the spark had been traded for stability. I looked at Mark, exhausted, working himself to the bone for a house he wasn't even sure we could afford. And I realized I had been so focused on my own recovery and our savings account that I had forgotten to look at him. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night. We had finally hit our savings goal, but that same afternoon, we lost a bidding war on a modest 3-bedroom house. Mark sat at the small desk in our cramped room, his head in his hands. "I don't know what else I can do, Sarah," he whispered. "I'm working 2 jobs. We're living in a basement, and it's still not enough." I realized then that Mark didn't just need a house. He needed to feel like a man again, not just a paycheck or a co-parent. He had spent a year respecting my boundaries, giving me space, and handling the finances without a single complaint. I had been treating our relationship like a transaction, waiting for the right time or the perfect house to be the wife I wanted to be. I realized that while I was waiting for our life to start, Mark was drowning in the life we were already living. That night, I stopped looking at the Zillow listings. I stopped worrying about the debt of kindness. I realized that sex and intimacy aren't rewards for a man who provides. They are the fuel that allows a couple to survive the grind. I started initiating again, not out of obligation, but out of a deep, renewed attraction for the man who had stood by me when things were at their lowest. The change in Mark was almost instant. The provider fatigue started to lift when he felt connected to me. The stress of the money and the living situation seemed smaller. We're still in my parents' house for now, but the walls don't feel quite as thin anymore. We've learned that financial boundaries are important, but emotional connection is the only thing that keeps the bank from breaking. Marriage isn't a 50-50 split. It's a constant shift of weight. Sometimes one person carries the financial load, and the other carries the emotional one. But if you stop connecting, you're just 2 people working for a bank. To the women out there, don't wait for the perfect circumstances to show your partner they're seen. To the men, kindness and patience are the most attractive things you can offer. We'll get that house eventually. But for now, we have each other. And that's a wealth no market can take away.